Good afternoon. Please. Wow. Thank you so much, Mayor Bass, former Congresswoman Bass, friend. Thank you so much for hosting me here. I'm really delighted to be here in Los Angeles, to be here in the beautiful Getty House, and to be among so many friends. I have to tell you that Mayor Bass is sorely missed, and I kind of trip over Mayor because I still want to call her Congresswoman. I've known her as that for so many years, but the mayor is sorely missed in DC. Her engagement on international issues, on Africa, while serving in Congress, you're sorely missed. But we accepted your call in Los Angeles to bring her back here as mayor. And I'm watching every day her activities, and she really is making all of us proud in New York. So I was going to say, let's give her a hand of applause, but you did. So, I thought I would get away from the United Nations and head to Los Angeles to rub shoulders with the stars. I'd see Barbara Streisand at some trendy wine bar in Malibu, or maybe I'd run into Beyonce on Rodeo Drive. A girl has to dream. But here I am, almost 3,000 miles from the UN Security Council, in another room full of diplomats. So that tells you who I really am. I'm one of you. But all jokes aside, I'm really thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled that the mayor brought us all together. And it's truly an honor to be amongst so many distinguished diplomats from the Los Angeles Consular Corps. And especially because I started out my diplomatic career as a consular officer in Jamaica. The lessons I learned during that posting still guide my work today. And more than anything, during my time as a consular officer, I learned that foreign policy is about people. Not just the people in the capital city, but in every corner of the country you're serving in. What you do, unlike your colleagues in Washington and New York, is take foreign policy to the people. That is what I'm doing in my current job and what I've done throughout my career, from my time in Jamaica to my last overseas posting in Liberia. Too often, leaders and diplomats take a macro level view of foreign policy, and they lose sight of the needs of the most vulnerable. And we certainly have seen this mayor take on that responsibility. At a time when people around the globe face amazing challenges, millions of people have been pushed to the brink, we need to stay focused on what really matters most: the security, the prosperity, the dignity of each and every person everywhere in the world. And this brings me to what I'd like to focus on today. And I'd like to look at 5 global challenges that demand global solutions: food security, water security, the climate crisis, protracted conflicts, and attacks on human rights. So let's look at the global food security crisis. As we speak, more than 345 million people are suffering from high levels of food insecurity. And this is a 5-alarm emergency. From day one, the Biden administration has taken on this crisis with urgency. We've committed billions of dollars to address food insecurity, and we've brought this issue to the top of the UN's agenda. Food security, particularly ending famine, will be the focus of the United States upcoming presidency of the Security Council. And this has been my focus for every year that I have been there since I started this job. This will be the third time that I will be serving as president of the Security Council. Of course, no country can solve a crisis of this magnitude alone, which is why we've called on every country to do more and to give more. This is a humanitarian imperative, and it's a security imperative. After all, food security is national security. The second issue, water insecurity, and I know in Los Angeles this is something that people face every single day. Estimates suggest that almost half of the world's population will suffer severe water stress by 2030. This is a dire crisis, one that hits women and girls the hardest. During this year's UN Water Conference, I announced that the United States is committing $49 billion toward equitable, climate-resistant, resilient water and sanitation investments. We are working to build a future where safe water flows freely for all. But again, we cannot do this work alone. We're counting on other countries to step up, and we're counting on the private sector to invest in the water supply and sanitation sectors. The third and fourth issues I want to discuss are the climate crisis and protracted conflicts around the world. And we've tried on several occasions since I've been in the Security Council to connect those two issues. We've not succeeded because two countries on the Security Council don't see climate as contributing to insecurity. But it's no secret that our planet is warming at a rapid pace. Earlier this month, the world experienced the hottest day ever recorded. The climate crisis is not a crisis of the future. It is already here. And we see that in Los Angeles, where climate change has increased the frequency of extreme heat and floods and wildfires. And I want to give the mayor kudos. I want to give kudos to LA for being so forward thinking on climate, particularly for continuing to work toward the goals of the Paris Agreement, even when the last administration withdrew U.S. support. Being part of this landmark international agreement, as we once again are, is critical because this crisis impacts every single person in every single country, and especially the global south. We know that the climate crisis is making it harder for farmers to grow crops. And we know the climate crisis is increasing pollution in water systems and decreasing water availability around the world. Both the water crisis and food security crisis have also been exacerbated by conflict, including the war in Ukraine and fighting in places like Sudan and Syria and Yemen. Since Russia launched its brutal war of aggression against Ukraine, its forces have weaponized food. Russia has turned Ukraine's rolling wheat fields into battlefields. It has deliberately attacked Ukraine's agricultural infrastructure. And just this week, Russia suspended its participation in the Black Sea Grain Initiative, an arrangement that has helped lower food prices and feed the world. It was a shameful act of cruelty, which followed Russia's decision to block cross-border humanitarian aid from reaching Syrians who are in dire need, Syrians who are suffering from conflict, Syrians who have gone through the horrible experience of an earthquake that devastated their country. The bottom line is this: where there is conflict, there is hunger. Where there is conflict, there is water scarcity. We all have a responsibility to push for the just resolution of war. We must do so for the good of those trapped in conflict zones and for the good of the entire world. The final issue I want to raise is today's attack on universal human rights, especially from authoritarian leaders. In Sudan, we're beginning to see reports using the dreaded word genocide to describe the situation in Darfur. In Ukraine, women have endured rape, torture, and killings by members of the Russian forces. In North Korea, we continue to see state-led repression of the fundamental freedoms of much of the population. And in China, the government has committed genocide and crimes against humanity against Uyghurs and members of other ethnic and religious minority groups in Xinjiang. Tragically, the list goes on. And we know gender-based violence and the oppression of women persists around the world, in Iran, in Afghanistan, and elsewhere. This December, we will mark the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a document that enshrined the values on which the United Nations was founded. And while the world has made great strides since then, clearly our work is far from finished. So we must stand together to uphold the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and call out anyone, anywhere who tries to roll back our hard-earned progress. This is how we fight for security and dignity of all, everywhere in the world. This is how we honor the UN Charter, which calls on all of us to address issues of peace and security. Now, I know this is a daunting list of challenges, and believe me, it is not the only list. There are many other challenges that we face. But the good news is this: we do have the power to address all 5 of these challenges, especially as we approach the Sustainable Development Goals Summit, which will be held at the UN in September. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals, also known as SDGs, are the world's blueprint. It's a blueprint for building a more just, a more secure, and a more prosperous future for the planet. They are sort of our guiding light, our guiding principles. Unfortunately, the international community has fallen behind on many of these goals, and on some, we've actually backtracked. And that's what makes the upcoming summit so important, and that's why the United States is committed to driving progress forward on all 17 SDGs. In this work, we have a strong partner in the city of Los Angeles. Thank you, Mayor. LA is at the forefront of efforts to invest in clean energy, tackle hunger, root out gender equity, deal with the housing issue, and advance other SDGs. These efforts have been detailed in the city's 2 voluntary local reviews. And LA is the first city in the world to report SDG data at the indicator level through the open source platform. Mayor Bass, we are grateful. We're grateful to you and this city and your team for your continued leadership on the SDGs. You're an inspiration. You're an inspiration to the leaders of other cities around the world. And I want to encourage everyone here today to use your voice, your positions of power to advocate for change. As diplomats, you are the foundation of foreign policy. You understand better than anyone the impact geopolitical decisions have on people, and you are key to our efforts to tackle food and water insecurity, address the climate crisis and conflict, safeguard universal human rights. By working together, we can give hope to humanity. Thank you very much.